tendency to get over-attached to animals. When I was a kid, I brought a caterpillar inside to save it from the Massachusetts snow, so for the next 2 years, I had a pet moth, creatively named Mothy. Owning a moth was something my mother encouraged me not to brag about too much at school because the other kids might get jealous. The point is, I'm a hero to animal kind, and they have always been my most reliable, interesting, and steadfast friends. So you can imagine that years later, during my junior year of high school, when my marine biology class took a field trip to go and rescue stranded fish, I was the first to sign up. Every year around April, tropical fish lay eggs in the warm waters off the coast of Florida or in the Caribbean. Some of these eggs get swept up into the Gulf Stream where they hurtle rapidly northward until they hit the southern coast of New England and get trapped there in the bays. Now, I was a geography enthusiast. Won my school geography bee. Went to states. Tied for 23rd. So I was knowledgeable enough to recognize that while these fish were tropical in nature, the Rhode Island Ocean in winter is not. So I knew these freshly hatched, parentless fish were out of place. But I had helped a moth to survive cold winter weather, so I felt confident in my ability to save them too. And it seemed like this voluntary field trip was designed for people with my skill set. My high school class, along with other environmental groups, headed down to Fort Wetherill in Jamestown, Rhode Island to go diving for these Gulf Stream orphans and rescue them away to more suitable tank environments. I studied up the night before, eager to see exotic animals like queenfish, butterfly fish, angelfish, and amberjack. Far more elegant names than the local aquatic wildlife like sea bass, striped bass, and bass. My favorite was the cowfish, a yellow pufferfish sort of thing with miniature alien antennae sticking out above their eyes. I had a bunch of fun facts ready for the bus ride down to discuss with my classmates who would definitely see that I was cool. We were there to do a noble deed. To be defenders of the helpless, but to my surprise, not everyone seemed to be taking the operation as seriously as I was. My assigned lab partner, Allie, a senior whom I did not like, shut down any conversations about the fish we'd see and instead made us talk about the crazy things people said during beer pong at a party that weekend where she and a friend had hustled a drunker team for $75. She was a year older than me and popular. What? I feigned interest, saying things like, "Oh, I bet that was fun," or "Oh, wow, really?" Meanwhile, focusing on practicing my snorkel technique, breathing without using my nose, which ultimately proved fruitless. When we got to the water, even stunned by the cold as they were, the quarter-sized baby fish kept managing to swim out of the way of my butterfly net, wasting the little strength they had left. "You don't understand," I promised. "I'm trying to save your lives." But instead, they'd swim over to Allie's net and she'd toss them carelessly in our bucket. On one hand, yes, I wanted them to live. But I didn't like the idea that these children were learning to trust someone who might scam them out of $75 while underage drinking. I was supposed to be the one who had studied these fish, how to take care of them. And in the world that we lived in, it seemed popularity was all that mattered after all, and even the fish knew it. When I was considering giving up, I looked down and saw one yellow sphere shivering its way into the shelter of my net of its own volition. The cowfish, or cow, as I call them, I have a naming system, knew that the type of salvation he could really trust when he saw it. While locked in very meaningful eye contact, Cow sized me up, probed my soul to see that I wasn't just going to toss him in a bucket without a plan for his health. He saw me. We bonded. I brought him to our school aquarium, ready to feed him carefully portioned meals that would support a long and healthy life for a cowfish. I noticed over the first couple of days of being back in the tank, though, that Cow didn't seem himself. He was hiding amidst pieces of seagrass, only darting out for food when it was placed directly in front of him. And worse, when I tried to talk to him, it was like he was preoccupied. And after the first week, I realized why. A baby trunkfish turned up dead, ripped apart by other inhabitants of the tank. This was meant to be a safe haven, a refuge. And in a cruel twist of fate, a pack of angelfish were turning it into a bloodbath. Angelfish caught by none other than my lab's supposed partner, Allie. Who would have thought that the fish that Allie caught, raised, were growing up to be a bunch of big old bullies? My little fish wanted nothing more than to put more friendship in the world. He didn't deserve this. I needed to help Cow get out of this tank. So I prepped a second one after 8th period when Allie and all of our classmates would be at their sports for the day. I didn't do a sport because I carried a doctor's note to excuse me from physical education. If you're wondering if it was necessary, it was not. Changing tanks is a time-consuming process. You need to give the fish half an hour to acclimate to a new environment by putting them in a plastic bag. But to my surprise, Allie had a teacher meeting, today of all days, keeping her from sports. She showed up after only 5 minutes. If she noticed I was prepping a new tank for Cow, she might get wise ideas about moving over some of her serial killers too. I needed to distract her and buy time. Apparently, my half-hearted responses on the bus ride had made her see me as a confidant, because as we began talking for the second time in our lives, she immediately started regaling me of her most recent, wildly too graphic sexual escapades with another popular guy. It was wild, she said, to me, a geography-loving virgin whose best friend at this point was an aquarium pet. I didn't get what about me was screaming I should speak my most intimate secrets with this guy for 20 minutes. Was she just an oversharer? Were we like friends in her mind? But once we got past the stories I couldn't relate to, I tried asking her about why she was taking this class, and we ended up talking for a while about dolphin signature whistles and how she wanted to get a degree to study them. I hadn't known about them before, but they're actually very cool. They're like names for dolphins, and I told myself I wouldn't use too much time to explain all of this to you, but if you are interested, find me after. It'll be a great 3.5 hours. Anyway, I still needed her to leave so Cow and I could go back to talking about more immediately pressing things like not being eaten. And thankfully, the transfer went smoothly once she moved on. I thought we were in the clear, that Cow and I would grow old together. Laugh about the good times. All those buckets I put him in. I had known summer was coming up, and I didn't know who the school planned to have look after the tanks when school was out of session, but I had assumed there was going to be a plan. After returning from Memorial Day weekend, my marine biology teacher explained to us casually that both of our tanks of tropical fish had taken a downward turn. In an effort to save them, he donated the inhabitants to the aquarium in Boston in a tone oddly similar to when my mom said that Mothy had gone to live at a farm upstate. In retrospect, it seemed pretty clear. There had been no plan for the fish's longevity. When summer got close, he'd stop feeding those carefully portioned meals I prepared. We weren't heroes. To describe my emotional state upon this reveal, bad. Now, somewhere along our conversations, Allie had picked up the subtle fact that these fish were important to me. And about a week before the senior's graduation, I got a text from her. She was at the New England Aquarium sending a picture of a round yellow fish with the caption, "Look, Cow," in all caps, 3 exclamation marks. Now, I know that this fish was older, bigger, and I think a different species, so it almost definitely wasn't Cow, and Allie knew that too, I think, but she wanted to make me feel better, and it's still one of the kindest texts I've ever received. I cheered for a lot of seniors at their graduation that year, but none as loudly as Allie. I made her promise to tell me all of the hottest gossip stories when she started college in the fall, which was a huge mistake that I really wish she hadn't followed through on. But I like to think that somewhere at an aquarium upstate, Cow is happy that Allie and I are friends.